A quick review, and we'll move on pretty quickly here. We want to have healthy boundaries because God designed us to have healthy boundaries so that we are responsible for our own stuff. Back to my analogy, it's not my horse. Remember that analogy of it's not my horse. But some things are my horse. They're my responsibility. When we don't practice healthy boundaries, we get burnt out, we resent, we feel guilty, we feel overwhelmed, and it's because we're trying to take care of everybody else's horse. And so one of the number one things you feel when you're bad at boundaries, when you start establishing them, is that I feel guilty. I should be taking care of everybody's business. What I'm trying to encourage you, and we'll see through the whole study, God did not design us to be responsible for everybody's business. We are only responsible for how we behave, our feelings, our behaviors, our attitudes, our words. Remember that last week? We read those first sentences. We're responsible for what comes out of us. We are responsible for what comes out of us. We're not responsible for what comes out of the person in front of us. We're not responsible for what they did to us in the car in front of us and the finger they used. We're not responsible for the anger in someone else. That's not our fault. It's not our job to process that for them. We have to handle our own business. That's what boundaries are all about. So before I move on, any questions or comments about anything thus far? Anything we need to talk about before we move on? Did you practice baby nose this week? Or even big nose? Good, some nodding.
I say no every day.
You say no every day? Good for you. Good for you. And yeah, to my kids, to my children, absolutely. Absolutely. Good. Well, I hope over time, particularly if you struggle with boundaries, I'm telling you, I'm trying to encourage you, this is going to take some time for a new normal if you really start embracing it. I remember distinctly standing in my kitchen in North Houston, Texas, in the first place we lived, reading a boundaries book. I remember like it was yesterday, there was a counter, kitchen counter, I was holding a boundaries book, and I remember rereading certain sections so many times I memorized it because it felt so foreign. I remember thinking, I don't think this way at all about certain things in my life. And I remember thinking distinctly, well, my way's gotten me here. What if they're right? What if it really is freedom on the other side? And part of my emotion was, I was so anxious, I thought, again, I'm tired of feeling this anxiety. What if this way works? And I remember rereading it and rereading it and rereading it over and over and over. So it takes some time depending on the level of your boundary issues with certain people. So just trying to encourage you. This week, we're going to talk about healthy boundaries within the self. Last week was with others. This was with the self. Now, if you've listened to my sermons before, Mark 12:31, Jesus, of course, says to love our neighbor to the degree to which we love ourselves, Mark 12:31. And I say this at the top here, just to remind ourselves, we love ourselves when we take care of our needs, physical, emotional, and spiritual. If we don't love ourselves well, we can't love our neighbor well, or our neighbors well. When we take care of our needs. If you cannot take care of your own needs, you probably have a boundary problem. In most internal boundary problems, there's a lack of self-control. We can't say no to ourselves. As Jesus says, those people bear bad fruit. We can't say no to ourselves. That's the definition of self-control, is being able to say no to our own will. If you think about that, it's a really big deal. When Jesus says in Mark chapter 8 that to be my disciple, you have to deny your wills, pick up your cross, and follow me. Denying the will is a profoundly good thing to do when our will wants to do something unhealthy or immoral or sinful. And I use those words on purpose. Unhealthy doesn't mean it's a sin. It's not a sin to eat donuts. But if we eat them all the time, we're corrupting our body. It's unhealthy. And sure, it's hard to deny our will all the time if we're always embracing whatever our will wants all the time. And that's one of the key signs that a person is not a Christian, is that they just do what they want to do whenever they want to do it. And Christians say, no, fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And so we want to be able to say no to ourselves. Here are some major areas that Cloud Townsend bring up for common boundary problems in the self. And some of these I'll go faster or slower depending on how much you want to talk about them. Eating's a big one. Overweight people can experience extreme shame and self-hate. Eating and sexual behaviors are usually the ones that involve the most amount of shame when it comes to psychology and in counseling. It's a false boundary. And I'm telling you, food is never the issue. I've dealt with too many people, it's never the issue. And here's the common ones. It's a false boundary in avoiding intimacy. Well, they won't get close to me if I'm this big. Or food brings me comfort that people can't give me. It's the run to the ice cream, run to the cookies, run to the chocolate. And it does give you a physiological high because the sugar, right, insulin boosts and endorphins, and it feels great, particularly chocolate, which activates the same parts of the brain as crack cocaine does. So you will feel better for a little bit, but it's a way of self-medicating. You're not drinking alcohol, but you're doing something else to deliberately change your biochemical state in order not to feel the pain you're in. So it's not crack, but it is something else. It's a way of doing something to self-medicate to a degree. And this is very, very common when people have past pains, past trauma. And that's very sad. So I'm not fussing at these people. I'm saying these are common unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with past trauma. Like when, especially if they were molested, they were hurt as a child, it's very common to go overweight because they'll think, I'll be unattractive, no one can hurt me again. But all kinds of ways, passive aggressive. My mom is so controlling, I'll show her, I'll eat whatever I want to eat. I've met people like that. I would say, why do you, I know I shouldn't, but my mom always, she just rode me when I was a kid. I eat what I want to eat when I want to eat now. And it's always sad to me. I'm thinking they don't realize as an adult now they're reacting. They're living out a full just reaction to something they have as a child, and it's not aware to them. In counseling situations, then I'm more open in my role to say, do you want to keep living a life purely in relation to your mom? Usually the answer is no. But if it's just someone who tells me in blue, I don't tell them in Kroger, oh, y'all have Dillons. I don't say, do you know that your mom and you can get over that? I don't. Depression and grief. I feel so sad, eating makes me feel happier. These are false boundaries. There's more there, right? These are just big highlights of very common problems of internal boundaries. But I have this little asterisk here at the bottom, loving yourself. That's always end on the positive, what we're supposed to do. Loving yourself means understanding food as fuel, used within healthy limits and not as a substitute for dealing with emotional issues. That's what it is. Well, David, does that mean I'm a sinner or I feel bad if I do feel happier after I have my morning coffee? Or if I do feel happier after I have, Chelsea saying amen, after my ice cream? No, it's not bad and sinful to feel bad. That's a physiological response. It's just not healthy to do those things in order to feel good about yourself or not process a pain. If it's an escape drug or escape food, escape behavior, and you find yourself having a hard time saying no, that's a false boundary problem. And you got to get your finger on that and figure out why it is you're not loving yourself enough. You're not loving. There's something about that's going on in a food issue. And food is not the issue. It's an internal emotional issue where food is just the tip of the iceberg. That lets you know there's a boundary problem. I'll say this one more time. The reason why it's a boundary problem is when people have eating problems, they are trying to establish a boundary, but it's not a healthy boundary. So instead of saying, I don't want someone to hurt me again like they did when I was a kid, I'll show them by having a boundary of getting really overweight. Well, that's not a proper boundary of someone hurting you. Proper boundary of someone hurting you is processing your past grief and trauma, developing the proper coping skills to deal with that anxiety, developing proper communication skills to tell a person, no, I don't want to hang out with you, developing self-defense skills, learning how to spot toxic people. There's all kinds of healthy ways to process life and deal with appropriate boundaries with unhealthy people. It's not appropriate or healthy for you to make up a quote-unquote false or virtual boundary by getting overweight. Does that make sense? So it's a false boundary. It's an unhealthy boundary. You're still trying to limit yourself from pain, from hurtful people, but you're doing it in an unhealthy way. There are healthy ways to do it, and that's what this whole study is about. There are healthy ways to say no, and over time you'll get more and more practice of how to say the word no. We'll do that. Any question about that before we move on? Question or comment? Anything at all?
Gains weight doesn't do it for that, though.
That's right. Everyone who gains weight doesn't do it for a boundary problem. That's right.
Sometimes
Absolutely.
it's losing extreme weight, too.
Sometimes they're losing extreme weight. That's right. You can use the absence of food to create a false boundary of if I'm terribly skinny, they won't blink, whatever. Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. So you can be real skinny as a false boundary, unhealthy boundary. That's right. So any kind of food issue. So I'm encouraging you, if you have an issue at all, I pass those donuts, I just can't stop myself. I just can't say no. That means something. If you legitimately can't say no, that means something emotional. It's not the donut's fault you can't. The donut's not making you eat it, right? You are not able to say no. That's an internal boundary problem. And you figure out why it is. Why is it I can't? And, I can go on for a long time. We're running out of time. So don't let the food's not the fault. It's just tasted so good. No, it doesn't make you do that. You're deciding to never say no to it or having a hard time saying no to it. Money, as Paul says in 1 Timothy 6:10, is the love of money, devotion to it is the root of all kinds of evil. Again, the money's not the issue. Our devotion to it is. A lot of times impulse spending, poor budgeting, credit problems, living beyond our needs, enabling others, they typically lack healthy internal boundaries. People blame money, but it's not the money's problem. You know, in grocery stores and stores, they have those impulse aisle. That's on purpose, right before the checkout. Oh, that looks good. The magazines, the candy, and the whatever. And that's why, of course, when you walk into a grocery store, they want the fastest, quick things right in front of you. And they deliberately put stuff they lay it out in such a way they want impulse buying. It's very, very deliberately psychologically based. It only works on people who have poor boundaries. I remember one time, I was in a Bible study class, well, they called it a Sunday school class, and it was about 40 adults, all middle-aged to, I don't know, probably 30s to up to maybe up to 50. And we were in the class, and they were talking about money. It was the issue, that lesson was on money and Christians and money, and they started talking about credit cards. And, well, the problem is they make it sound so awesome in this commercial, and you could do this, and yeah, if you do this, you don't pay off for 6 months. And they were popcorn kind of, yeah, that's right. They were all affirming each other for how impossible it is to say no buying with credit. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe no one was saying, y'all have gone crazy. So I finally said something, and I was new to the class, and I said, or we can say no to it. And a hush fell over the crowd. And I would have been smart, like I thought, and that was it, and we kind of moved on. It's like no one had occurred. They were just purely a victim to commercials and 6 month no interest, and that's a money issue. The money's not the issue, it's a boundary problem issue.
They were enabling each other.
They were enabling each other, that's right. And they're only guilty or whatever, they were validating each other. Yeah, I'm with you. I can't say no to those donuts either. That's the same kind of validation. That's right. So money is not the problem. It's not the problem. If you're broke, it's just not. Loving yourself means understanding money as the primary means by which we are able to care for our own needs and for our neighbor's needs. That's the point. Hello, good evening. So the point is that we're said to care for each other's needs and our own needs. That's the main thing. Does that mean we can't have luxury? Sure, we have luxury. So if you think about money like you do food, in that sense, it's a tool. Food is a tool to give us strength and growth to love our neighbor as ourselves. If we're morbidly obese, it sure is hard to help our neighbor cut the grass or to help someone who needs help. It's tough to love our neighbor as ourselves if we can barely move, barely breathe, and so forth. If we've done it to ourselves, not if we've had a stroke and so forth. Same thing with money. If we're spent out of the hilt and we're way overspending in our house or home or cars or way over what we need, it sure is hard to love our neighbor as ourselves. We have nothing left to give them. So money really is a tool as much as we can. And it's a tool to have fun with too. There's nothing wrong at all with using money to have fun time. That's nothing wrong with entertainment, depending on what kind of entertainment it is. But in general, it's a tool. Top of page 6, and I need to stop anything? Makes sense of money? Money's not the problem. It's not the commercials. It's us. Time. People who are chronically late. Chronically, not tonight, but chronically late. Chronically late, yeah, Chelsea did it. Unaware of time restraints, constantly blaming traffic, the weather, El Nino. They can be overwhelmed with job responsibilities, typically lack healthy internal boundaries. They're the ones, you know them at work or at school or church, they're just always going to be late. They have their boundary problems. They might feel, a few things here, omnipotent, that they feel they can or should be able to do all things for all people or be all things. So-and-so needed me, I had to stop, I had to. We also call that this kind of a Messiah complex. They needed me. I had to stop what I was doing. Well, that depends on your office. There are times as pastor, if they do need me, I've got to stop. But in general, I don't feel everyone needs me. I don't want to, okay, Lisa needs me now, and then so does. No, people do their own stuff. But if I always thought I had to be there and be the one to save them, that's a Messiah complex. There's something wrong with me if I felt that, and I don't feel that way. But a lot of people do in life, and so that's a boundary problem. Over-responsible for the feelings of others. If I leave right now, it'll hurt their feelings. I can't leave. I can't hang up the phone. I know I'm going to be late, but I can't hang up the phone. What would I say? You say, I'm sorry, I've got to get off the phone. I'll talk to you later. But you feel over-responsible, you're going to be late. Your time's going to be out of whack. Or lack of commitments. They're so in the moment, they're oblivious to appropriate planning. They don't think ahead for events, traffic, weather. They just don't have the lack of commitments at all. That's a boundary problem. They might feel that way. It might feel that way, which leads to a boundary problem. They rationalize it. He's my friend. It's okay. Oh my goodness, I've heard that one. I knew you wouldn't mind. I knew you wouldn't care. Well, a lot of times I do care, and so I'll tell my friends that. Well, I know it's okay. Well, it's not okay. I'm tired of being late to the movie. So from now on, I'm going to go ahead and you can meet me there when you want. That's fine. I'll save you a seat. But, I mean, it's not okay. I'm paying money for the ticket or whatever it is. Or, no, we've been waiting for an hour with the food and it's cold. I'm not doing that again. Love you, but not that much. You know. So, validated in that they receive emotional strokes for others being late. Are you okay? I was worried. I've seen people's faces kind of light up when they're asked the question. But they're chronically late, see? And that lets me know there's something else going on. They love the crisis mode. Or they're the listener rescuer. They're opening up to me right now and it makes me feel so good. I need it right now so I can't leave. I feel needed. They need me. Well, that's about you. That's not about anything else. That's about your need to feel needed. Loving yourself means understanding your time as the primary means by which we are able to fulfill our moral duties on earth. Loving God, loving neighbor. It's a tool that we're wasting or we're using well. And that includes workaholics and working too much. Time is a tool. Let me pause there. Any question or comments about the use of time? If you're willing to be open, do you ever struggle with time limits or you no problems?
I'm frustrated with time.
Frustrated with time?
First thing in the morning when I look at the clock, it makes me angry.
You look at the clock, makes you angry?
I feel like I never have enough time.
Never have time to do stuff?
I'm always late for everything.
Gotcha.
Did you before you had kids, though? That kind of puts a little extra weight.
Yeah, having children sure change. Yeah, that's true.
I have very terrible time management.
Which you can work on, right? We can work on that, figure out why it is you have it, not even as a group, but that's something you work on, the time management, figure out why it is that you do have problems with time management. Sometimes it's something that's really, and I say this, well, they say it later on too, bottom page 7 and so forth. Sometimes we just didn't learn the skill set. There's still an emotional payoff to it, but sometimes we just didn't learn the skill set, and you learn that and you go, oh, now I do better. It's if you know better and you keep on doing it, that might be a telltale sign of something else. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It's healthy for children to know that mom's time's important, too.
That's right. Healthy for children to know that mom's time is, that's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I've told my children many times, I love you, but not really. I'm just teasing. I'll tell them, yeah, sure, I love you. Right now it's mom, we can have time together. We love you, we'll see you later. So they don't get every second of our time. They don't get all of our attention all the time. They'll make it without us. And can I quote Bill Cosby in these days anymore? I brought you into this world, I can take you out. You know, but we brought you into this world, and I'm so glad we stink in love. We adore our children. But they don't get all of us. They don't. I've got to restore and every day, all the time, my relationship with my wife, and I say no to them. That's exactly right. They don't. That's right. And the same thing with, later on, I think we talk about this in marriage, but same thing with spouses or maybe other friends, but certainly spouses. They've got to have time where they're just doing their own thing as well. But time. Lisa, were you going to say something earlier? You sure? Okay.
Sure.
No, really did look like you were going to. Bottom of 6, task completion. People who typically can't finish it, who can't finish that, they can't get the job done. They might feel resistance to structure. This is especially common when your parents were controlling. It is especially common. The ones who were just, I don't know what got into Billy. He went to KU and he flunked out of class. He was always on time. Well, Mama wrote him all the time. And she woke him up 14 times alarm clock and made him breakfast and folded his laundry and then checked his teachers for the homework. All of a sudden, he's set free. He never learned internal boundaries because someone was always the rescuer and changed it. And I was like, forget this. I met many people who say, this is so unfortunate. They were forced to go to church. We were there 30 minutes early. We were the last ones to leave. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, Friday, choir practice. And then now I don't want to do it anymore. As soon as Mom and Dad didn't make me go, I'm out. I don't really blame them. Since that kind of forced structure upon their lives. That can happen. It's still happening today. Fear of success. There are people. They'll envy me or criticize me if I succeed. I'll get a lot of attention. They'll expect me to do this again. What if I'll never perform like this way again? And they deliberately sabotage or don't commit too much to it. Distractibility. They've not developed the necessary competency of concentration. That takes time. I was telling someone just the other day that when she said, when I'm lying in bed and I'm praying, she said, my mind just goes here and there and here and there and here and there, and I know it's so dumb, so stupid. I said, it's not stupid. As usual, people judge themselves all the time. I said, it's not stupid. It's normal. And this sense of distractibility takes time. It takes time to concentrate and practice on what your thoughts are. That's a normal routine. It just takes time. But some people haven't developed that. Delayed gratification, that sense of they can't say no to other compulsive desire for thrills or immediate payoffs. I'm bored now. That's a very, very, very childish impulse that we have. I love how John Townsend says that there are only two kinds of people in the world who always want to have fun: children and addicts. It's very true. Only children and addicts always want the thrill. They always want the next payoff. They're thrill junkies. And a lot of times people I've met through counseling through the years who have gone through all kinds of crises, not always. If they're a victim, that's different. But when they're not a victim, oftentimes it's because they're addicted to the drama. It creates a lot of adrenaline bursts in their body, and they love the drama. They love getting in trouble. It's very common amongst teenagers. The other day I was talking to my son was telling me that a guy he's hanging out with, a little boy said, is a little bit younger than he is, saying, "You always do the right thing." I said, "Well, no, but I try. I'm a Christian and so forth." "Well, I don't try, and I don't want to always do the right thing. I like doing the wrong thing." And to me, I just saw a flash forward that he's probably going to keep doing what he just said, and that thrill of doing the wrong thing and being the guy on the edge, and that's unfortunate. So, but adults do it too sometimes. And if we're not careful, we're chasing the next gratification. People who jump from job to job to job to job, relationship to relationship to relationship, hobby to the next hobby. There's something going on that they don't have that ability to complete the task, to stay in there. Inability to say no to other pressures. Loving yourself means understanding the healthy discipline of completing tasks and keeping your commitments. Keeping your commitments. Doing what it is you say you're going to do. I love myself. I'm going to follow through. I'm going to be responsible. Any questions about that? Comments? The tongue. Just did a sermon on this one. We will be held accountable for what we say. Matthew 12:36, he says that explicitly. The tongue can be the source of blessing or curse. James 3:9-10. It blesses when we encourage, validate, and exhort. It curses when we talk nonstop to hide from intimacy. I've known a few people in my life, particularly women, not sure why that is, but it has been typically, who just cannot pause. You have to, you wait for them to breathe. It's like they're breathing while they talk. I don't know how they do it, but I mean, I've known people, they dominate conversations, which is a way of stopping intimacy. I can't pause and have you ask about me. I'd have to answer a question that you probe me on. I don't want to do that. I can control the conversation. I'm talking at least all the time. I control it. It's a controlling issue, which means they don't want to be out of control, which means they're afraid of vulnerability and intimacy. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. Gossip in order to feel important, to punish others for hurting you. That's a real common one. That's a boundary problem. No one who gossips is mature. Nobody. Take it to the bank. Nobody. Everybody who gossips and enjoys gossip is doing it because they like to feel important and or they like to punish. And either way, it puts them in what we call in psychology a one-up position. They're better than you because you're ignorant. I had to tell you the news. Now I feel good. I'm more important than you. Or two, I got to hurt the other person or criticize the person behind their back, which means I'm still in a one-up position because I nailed him. It's immature, it's unhealthy, it's childlike. That's what children do. But it's a boundary problem. It's supposed to be make, not mark. Make sarcastic remarks, expressing indirect hostility. There's a difference between irony and sarcasm. And people all through the years say, David's sarcastic. When I was a kid in high school and sometimes now, whatever. Even in my home, I don't allow sarcasm in the house. And this isn't word games, this is legit. Sarcasm is saying something that is implicitly meant to express hostility or anger or rage or dislike. It's deliberately, boy, this food is wonderful, but you know you hate it. Instead of just saying it's not my favorite food, you deliberately say it. It's supposed to be expressing anger, rage, some kind of disappointment, disapproval. Irony is when you say something which you mean the opposite, but you're not expressing any kind of subversive feeling at all. It's just to make the person laugh. It's more like wit is typically a sense of irony. Right now, I'm hot, I'm sweating, whoo, it's cold in here. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not expressing rage at you or anyone in the room. I go, ooh, and you might laugh and go, man, I'm really hot. It might be kind of funny. That's different. Irony and sarcasm is quite different. People are sarcastic, you know when you've heard it. You know you've heard it. So in my home, for example, this is just my home, I disallow it. Even for my wife. And my kids, we say, babe, let's don't, and my kids say, I love it. Hayden, no, we don't do that. Julia, no, baby, we don't do that. Let's don't be sarcastic. Let's say what we mean. Because of this reason. It expresses indirect hostility. Of course, the tongue can threaten someone. That's direct hostility. It's amazing how often that happens, by the way, in conversations. There are a few people in this church already, but several previous churches, it just always happens. There's people who express hostility. They'll do it because they'll start raising their voice. If you start having a different view, they'll raise their voice real loud, they'll get louder. I've been in meetings where people slam the table really hard, over and over. I've been in a meeting here at this church and in my life all the time. But you'll see, of course, with my counseling background, I'm always paying very close attention to body language. But I mean, and I think blah, blah, and they'll hit it hard. Well, it's an implicit way of getting you to back down. And the more you don't back down, it makes them very anxious on the inside. And so they're going to get louder because they don't like the fact that you won't listen to them. And then that's, oh well. Why is that? Gene would say, Gene, you make the same smiley face when they do that, and you say, bless their heart. They must be very anxious and insecure on the inside. They have a boundary problem with your anger. They're expressed in an inappropriate way. That's not how we do it. Yeah, please.
Practice my boundaries on my ex-boyfriend of 6 years and my dad, probably.
Well, those people might not ever need to be, yeah, those are toxic.
But, you know.
Yeah, but other people, sure. Yeah, you need to read the book, Beyond Boundaries. Beyond Boundaries. If you like to read, or maybe you can listen to it if you download audio. Some people don't like to read, but.
Is that Cloud and Town?
Yep, it's on the bibliography in the very last page. Beyond Boundaries. It'll talk about what you just said. How do I do it? How do I start letting down some for other people? How do I start learning to trust other people when I've been around so many toxic people? That's a very good question. And it takes time and courage, and they'll give you particular steps to help you. And they'll help you, and they've helped me. And of course, give disingenuous praise and seduce. Loving yourself means controlling your speech to be used for healthy Christian reasons. Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth, but only that which is for building up and edifying. So that's our tongue. Our tongue is a tool that can build up or tear down. And all I'm saying is, if you find yourself, not one time you mess up on this list, oh, now I'm going to hell, I have bad boundaries. If you find yourself in these patterns, it means something's going on the inside that you ought to check out to figure out what's going on. Why am I having a boundary problem with my tongue? Why am I having a problem saying no to saying that? Some people, I don't mean it's just word, what they call it, word vomit or word whatever. It just blurts out of me. Well, it doesn't just do it, you are doing it. If you are doing it, it means something. There's a reason why you're doing it. There's a reason why there's a boundary problem. That's inside. There's a reason why it's hard for you to say no. And there's a lot of reasons, for time I won't, but I could give you a lot of reasons that kind of stuff can happen. Why? But all I'm saying is these are symptoms. Sexuality, people who suffer from sexual problems can experience extreme shame and self-hate, which reinforces the behavior. They feel ashamed, they keep doing it. This and food, like I said, are the top two shaming kind of behaviors. Most people do not feel shame with gossip. They don't feel that much shame with money. They don't feel that much shame about time. It's these two that, in our American society, they feel the most amount of shame. Lacking sexual boundaries can manifest in compulsive, sorry ladies, compulsive relationships, pornography, prostitution, all kinds of stuff. And because they're boundary problems, they're internal boundary problems, they're acting out. And of course, loving yourself means experiencing your sexual desires within healthy, heterosexual, monogamous Christian relationships. Jesus says that explicitly in Matthew 19, 3-12. He goes back to Genesis 2 and he says, God made man and woman for marriage, or they're a eunuch. That's Jesus. If you don't like that, I feel you, but talk to Jesus when you see him. So that's an internal boundary. If we act out any other way, Jesus will say you're having something inside. You need to say no to that. Sure. That's good. So time and, I'm repeating this for the podcast, time and ADHD and ADD. My view is absolutely, and I would say in that sense, if it's the genuine disorder, they have biochemical things that cause the compulsive behavior. So it's still a boundary problem. Gotcha. So and that's the compulsive desire driven by other things going on. So it's still a boundary problem. You would say, well, why do I have a boundary problem? Well, if it's a disorder, it's a chemical imbalance or something else. So it doesn't mean in that case you're doing it because you're trying to get attention or you're trying it for these other reasons. It's just biochemical. It's like, why do you get migraines? Well, because everyone loves you when you get migraines and you get a lot of attention. Well, no, I can't control migraines. Well, it can't control ADD either if it's a Some people can't control chronic depression. They can't control, there's a lot of things like that. So the cause can just simply be biochemical, which means it leads to a boundary problem. So you have to work hard and make it even harder. And of course, a lot of people, when they can afford it, get medication to help themselves have a boundary, help themselves say no to wandering. I need to say yes to focusing. Well, I need meds to get me there. Some people need meds to say, it's hard. Some people for whom it is impossible to say no to anxiety because of a biochemical problem. They need medication so they can start saying, no, I will not allow my mind to wander to anxious thoughts. Those are chronic issues. And the cause is not because they need attention, they're a center, it's a biochemical. But it is a boundary problem. We're just talking about the cause of the boundary problem. So good question. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah, for Ted Bundy, who was addicted to pornography, there's a lot of horrible stories like that. And of course, all people who are exposed to pornography don't become, rapists and murderers and whatever. But it very well can and does tap into a very primal, overwhelming feeling. And the same region of the brain where crack cocaine and a lot of chocolate can get, it's overwhelming. And for those people who have other issues going on who want the thrill again, they've got to escalate it and got to escalate it and got to escalate it. That's exactly right. Which is why typically the pattern is exposure there and then pornography, and then it might be to view something, and then it might be a prostitute or strip club, then it might be a prostitute, then it might, oftentimes it can escalate. If they also have not just the desire to have a thrill, but they also have a compulsive desire to have a greater thrill. I've seen that I've seen it in marriages, where it's the greater thrill that gets them way out of whack. And for those people, any kind of nudity is, like any exposure is like a crack to a crack addict. But for other people who don't have that problem, they're exposed to nudity in a movie, they have no desire, no compulsive desire to escalate. They go, yeah, I saw it, yeah, I was attracted, but next, they go on with life. But others, like a strong alcoholic might taste it a little bit and they can't say no. Yeah.
I was going to say every one of these things is true.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any of these things are any gender. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's a common misconception. In fact, the last study I saw was around 20 to 25% of females who have addiction to pornography. And I thought it'd be something like a 2%, but it was a lot larger than what I thought. But I've seen different studies, and they keep changing. I saw a study, I want to say a couple years ago, of a guy who was doing, I think it was one of those TED Talks. Have you ever heard of a TED Talk? It's they do a little short lecture. He gave a talk on the studies of pornography, how it affects the brain. And he said, I want to do a study where we were trying to analyze a certain demographic age of young men, particularly between ages of something like 18 to 34 or something. We wanted to find some people who had not looked at it before, and then of course compare their brains to those who had. They searched and searched and searched and searched, and guess what they couldn't find? Anybody who wasn't watching it. So they just had to study those who were watching all the time, see what the brain did. So it's a big deal. Big deal. Do you mind if you get the door for me? I'm sorry, thank you. Only because this mic picks about everything. Thank you. So, and if I can keep going there and I'll move on in a second, not to make you uncomfortable with this, but we're adults here in sexuality. Particularly those even in marriage, ideally, right? When we're married and we have sex, I see this often in marriages that issues or problems arise from, they're emotional. I'm telling they're always lack with that. And most of the time, people who have compulsive need for pornography, prostitution, on these other issues, it is almost always an issue of they have a problem with intimacy. That is to say, it's a false boundary. It's a thrill without the ability to get intimate with a person. I've known many guys who are addicted, and it came down to it. They just had they didn't bond with their wife well, emotionally. And this other was just the cotton candy, as it were. They had a real problem with intimacy, and it can work both ways. So my point is, like all this, it's an emotional issue or psychological most of the time. Sometimes, back to the ADD example, sometimes it's physiological, and we can get meds for that and help us. And Lord Jesus, there's no shame in that. Oh my goodness. I don't think I've been meaning to say that every single sermon, but there's no, oh my goodness. I get a headache, I take Advil, okay? So what? I'm not a sinner because I have a headache. Some people need other meds. And of course, substance abuse. Loving yourself means not exposing yourself to deleterious substances, that is, destructive substances. That's an internal boundary problem. Now, why is that an internal boundary problem? Because healthy people don't deliberately do something to hurt yourself. You don't deliberately do that. That's why if someone's cutting, at my previous church, there was a young girl who came to we had a huge sports part of the ministry, is massive, and I would get contacted every once in a while with some issue, and this young girl, probably 12 years old, maybe 14-ish or whatever, she was cutting all over her arms. And they had reached out to the mom and to ask if it was okay with me, so I came right over right away. And we met 2 or 3 different times. Me and the young girl did, and just a typical teenager, but she was cutting because she saw someone had done it. She thought it was kind of cool, and then it gave her, which is typically people cut because it gives them a thrill. And my point is, the reason why it's completely appropriate in that setting for me to talk to her is because I know any healthy person would not deliberately want to cut themselves and hurt themselves. Nobody would do that. So I'd want to change her behavior. Now what happens in society, of course, a little footnote, not to start preaching, is when culture starts deciding what is unhealthy and healthy, what's deleterious and not, that's when people get upset. There's a whole host of things that people still think are bad for you. But there's a lot of things people used to think were bad for you, now it's perfectly acceptable. And if you say, let's try to get that behavior changed, who do you think you are? And so it's chipping off the ice, slow by slowly. It's letting go what used to be, used to be a lot of things like that. And that's the same thing with alcohol dependency or drug dependency, food dependency. There's still enough in our culture, and I would dare say in Christianity, we know for sure, that people who love themselves do not deliberately put those things in their body to hurt themselves, deliberately alter their self for that reason.